What's up, you bunch of lost pluggers? I'm System Tech 66. Welcome to the channel. We're talking about Resident Evil 9. I think it's about time, after RE4 Remake's trailer just dropped, that we move on to RE9. We know everything that we need to know about Resident Evil 4 Remake from that trailer, and I think we should speculate on Resident Evil 9. And the only thing we can do at the moment is speculate on this forthcoming mainline entry. So, I'm reading from an article from Happy. Now, Happy seemed to like Village, and that's fine. You can like what you want to like. I personally didn't like it. It's up there with Resident Evil 6 in terms of kind of ruining the series and the mainline canon entry, and Shadows of Rose was absolutely god-awful. Sorry if you hear rustling, I'm just moving my mic. And I just didn't understand where they were going with it. So I don't expect Resident Evil 9 to deviate from that, unfortunately. It's probably going to follow it quite closely. But anyway, we'll get on to it. Hopefully it doesn't. And we get something that's a little bit more like old school Resident Evil, but that's wishful thinking. Dusk Golem, he has said that RE9 started development in 2018 when it released. When it releases, it will be by far the longest RE game that's been in development. Now, Dusk Golem, unfortunately, he used to be quite spot on with his leaks and his coverage and stuff like that, but recently, maybe the past year, going into this year, he's been a little unreliable. And there's stuff that he was talking about with Resident Evil 4 Remake that he didn't get on point, and some other games as well. I think the Metal Gear remakes, things like that. So he's just been a little bit up and down. Now, they say first person versus third person. We can say with certainty that Resident Evil 9 will be a first person horror game. Will it though? Who knows? If Resident Evil 4 Remake does really well and sells really well, they might decide to do a third person. They say that Capcom has done a great job of having their cake and eating it too. I would disagree with that, but I would agree that yes, they have created two sort of series of games, the remakes for third person aficionados and then first person fans, but at the same time it's lost its identity as a Resident Evil game, because it is basically similar to something like Alien Isolation or Outlast or any sort of like first person styled kind of horror game. Resident Evil doesn't have an identity outside of that anymore. The third-person Resident Evil games kind of do, but it was always the originals, that golden era, that golden age of Resident Evil games, 1 to 3 on the PlayStation, the remake, Code Veronica. They're the games that sort of set a benchmark and had their own identity. Now Resident Evil doesn't have that much of an identity. It does and it doesn't. Like I said, third person over the shoulder has been done a million times in every other game, so it kind of slots in with those, but it's still more Resident Evil than, say, the first person. The first person Resident Evil games, they're their own thing, and they do their own thing, but at the same time, you look at Village and you look at something like Doom Eternal, I'd pick Doom Eternal any day over Village. It's just a more competent and a better first person shooting game. And yes, people might say, well, Village is a shooter. Let's not get that twisted. It is. It follows the same sort of path as Resident Evil 4 in how it presents itself. It's an action shooter, it's trying to be, and it's just not as competent as other action shooters. Say, for instance, Wolfenstein, etc., etc. Anything that it'd make. So yeah, the identity has been lost with Resident Evil going first person. The third person is more what I lean towards, and the remake of Resident Evil 2 was handled just well, and I enjoyed the over-the-shoulder third person. We have to be real, in this day and age, we're not going to get a fixed camera, tank control Resident Evil game, unless we get an indie game that's trying to emulate that. So we have to kind of settle for Resident Evil with new mechanics. But I think that the third person over the shoulders have way more identity as a Resident Evil product than Resident Evil first person games. You say something quite interesting when they say the father's story is done, which it was by the end of Village. What's unspoken here is that the story of the mother and daughter remains. Now that's interesting. We know Shadows of Rose kind of had Ethan in it, so we know that ending where he's walking towards the car in Village is Rose seeing him in her mind and whatnot. I don't know. Like I said, Resident Evil's changed in a very different direction. But yeah, we could get the story of Mia and also Rose. Who knows? So yeah, but they could leave them as well. We could concentrate on Chris Redfield. He could be the main character. And yes, I know a lot of people are going to be groaning and saying, oh, they keep using this character over and over again. They keep ruining this character. And I agree with you. He is overused. At this point, he's just a guy that comes in and smashes boulders you know, and is just super competent and capable at taking out a whole village of, you know, fucking lichens and whatnot, you know, and just whatever is thrown at him. But they do say that something that's been confirmed is Umbrella Corporation will be involved in some devious way. Secondly, an infection of either viral or fungal nature is going to fuck shit up. And finally, Chris Redfield will turn up at some point to save everybody's butts. The rest they say is moonshine. So, I mean, again, that is speculating on their part, but they're probably pretty much spot on. You know, RE9 might be on the PS5, Xbox Series X, but that all depends on whether we're going to get a PS6 like in 2 years' time, you know, a new Xbox, and that's how they're going to keep playing things out. Like iPhones coming out, they want to, you know, keep bringing out consoles every 3 years or something. They're decreasing the amount of time that a console's lifespan should be, and that's really annoying. That's kind of like a piss take, it's a bit shit. So we'll have to see. That's all up in the air. We don't know. It just depends on how the market continues, really, and what Sony want to do. And it's fine. Like, some of you might be super rich. You might be able to afford the latest technology every year or something. But at the same time, do you really want that to happen? Like, do you really want a console to come out and have like a year or 2 years lifespan, and then you have to buy a new one? And it just turns into a Wii U situation. You ask yourself that. So anyway, we don't know at the moment because things could change. This game could be delayed. They could take years to create it, to make it. So we just don't know. So Resident Evil 9 leaks and rumoured title. When an anonymous source leaks video game details on a forum such as 4chan, it should be taken with a grain of salt. That's where mostly where all the Resident Evil 4 remake leaks came from. That's why they were bullshit. I called them out as bullshit. Yet, that's often easier said than done, and that's exactly the situation in regards to Resident Evil 9, which is purportedly going to be titled Resident Evil Apocalypse. Which reminds me of that horrible fucking film from Paul Anderson. According to the leaker, the game will be set in a dark forest where all manner of folklore-inspired monsters roam. Considering the fairy tale themes of Resident Evil Village, this development isn't particularly surprising, and it's in line with recent horror film trends, The Witch, Midsommar, and The Ritual. In the 4chan post, which has since been archived, the leaker stated the game will feature Capcom's interpretation of a Wendigo monster, as well as something referred to as the Goatman, which, while not particularly specific, has me intrigued. The post also claims that Resident Evil 9 will commit to body horror more strongly than any previous installment in the series, which says a lot considering the horrific transformations the franchise has built its reputation on. It's difficult to know how seriously to take these Resident Evil 9 leaks. I'd say at this point not very seriously, but if we get a glimpse of a horned Goatman monster in future previews, then I guess the anonymous leaker of the Resident Evil Village plot will be able to say, I told you so. Like I said with my latest videos regarding Resident Evil 4 Remake, the fact that leaks were fake, I said I told you so. A return of Lady Dimitrescu. When is Resident Evil Village coming out, you ask? Well, it has. What? That's confused me. It came out on May the 7th. Alright, cool. Of 2021. Okay, why would people ask that? They already know that. Which is the same day as the RE8 release date too. This is where this article goes off the rails. I'm so baffled by this. I'm just going to read it. And if you've played Resident Evil Village, you know this is probably delusional, but could Capcom really have done in the goodness of girth like that? Dying pitifully in an explosion of black worm-like fungus, and then finally forged into a boring-ass crystal statue. No, that's no way to treat the legendary. That is some bad writing. Yeah, anyway, it's like the person had an aneurysm halfway through writing that, but what they're trying to say is if Capcom knows what's good for them, they'll allow Lady Dimitrescu a richly deserved resurrection in Resident Evil 9. Hell, Albert Wesker has been killed and brought back to life numerous times, and that guy is about as charming as an ingrown toenail. So you're just super, like, on Village. You love Village, and you love that character. I'm not going to bring back Lady Dimitrescu, okay? She had her time. She was alright, she wasn't that amazing. Yeah, I get she had big tits and she was like 7 foot tall, but, you know, just chill on that. I lost kind of, I'm not going to lie, I lost interest in this article. It was written like by a 5-year-old, halfway towards the end. Right, okay, so Resident Evil 9, my thoughts and stuff on it, as it stands. It's interesting. They apparently say they're going to bring back an old character from the series. Could be Chris Redfield. You know, it could literally be Chris Redfield. But I'm hoping it's not. I'm hoping that it's someone like Jill Valentine, but at the same time, I don't want Jill to be placed in a bog standard kind of Resident Evil Village type Resident Evil game. I want it to be in something that's truly special and is strictly survival horror. You know, I want a game that goes back to the series roots, kind of like Resident Evil 2 Remake tried to do. It did kind of. It tried to do to an extent. Like, there's only so much you can do, but also moving the game into the new generation. And it did it. It did it well. It did it well. I'll stand here and say that. Like, some people don't like it. That's fine. I'm a huge fan of the original. The original's my favourite game ever made. I think the remake did fine. I liked it. It had that Dead Space vibe. You know, it was Resident Evil for the new generation, but kind of how I want them to proceed with the series going forward. I don't think Resident Evil 9 is going to be that. I think it's going to follow on from Village. I think Village did very well in sales numbers, and Capcom will see that and think, well, we should just replicate that. But a lot of fans, a lot of old school fans, just a lot of people in general, didn't really like it. Even people that came on board for Resident Evil 7, you know, and that's how they found the series. They didn't really like it compared to that game. So I think 9 is going to continue that trend. I think it's going to continue the first person, and I don't think Capcom like to just change things in that way when it comes to mainline entries and just go like third person, completely deviate from, you know, what that particular trilogy is. So I think we're going to have a first-person experience again. Am I happy or not happy about it? I'm kind of nonplussed. It just depends on if the game is good or not, really. If the game is good, if it's a good survival horror game, whether it's first-person, third-person, then, you know, I'd be happy. But I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they're going to replicate, like I said, the golden era of Resident Evil, which was the PS1 titles, the trilogy, which I absolutely loved to death. You know, the remake of the first game, which I loved to death, Code Veronica. And sort of that's about it. The Outbreak game as well on PS2, or the Outbreak games on PS2. You know, those were like the golden era of Resident Evil titles. This is something completely new. It's mutated to the point where I can't really tell what it is anymore. But Resident Evil 9, at the same time, you know, it could actually surprise us. That's the thing. It could really surprise us. I didn't think DMC 5 would be as good as it was. I thought it might be good, not as good as it was. It didn't, you know, I didn't think, it was going to blow me away like it did, but it really did. So Capcom can, you know, switch directions and change things up and surprise us. But yeah, like, I think Resident Evil 9, if it's going to feature an old character, I don't think it's going to be Jill personally. I know people say, oh, that's disappointing. You know, obviously I can't predict it. Like, I don't know because I'm not a developer on the game, but I'm saying I don't think it's going to be Jill. I don't. But having said that, the fact she's featured in the new CGI film, maybe they're trying to gauge whether people, you know, like that character. They still like that character. It's my favourite character within the series, personally. But maybe they're trying to gauge things. They do stuff like this just to kind of see if people like that character. They bring them back for a little bit, and then they maybe move on and, you know, put them in the forthcoming game or whatnot, or side games. So it could be Jill. Maybe it's Chris and Jill again. You know, if it is the last game in the series, they might want to end it with the two that started it. Who knows? Who knows what they're going to do? But yeah, this is supposedly the last entry in the mainline canon. So that's pretty much what Capcom said. As for the folklore stuff, I mean, it just, again, it depends on how it's done. That's the thing. It was handled really badly in Village, how they kind of spliced werewolves into it and vampire ladies and things like that. I think it was handled badly. But if in the next game they have a really cool reason for a Wendigo, or, you know, this goat-headed dude appearing in the game, in the series, and it links back to a virus, and it's really interesting the way that they've created these things, then it could do well. But I mean, Resident Evil isn't about folklore, horror, and all the rest of it. It's not about werewolves and vampires. It's, like I said, it's gone off the rails. It's just about Umbrella creating bioweapons and them getting released. And I know that RE Village, yeah, it had bioweapons, the Lycans were bioweapons, but it was just an excuse to create some werewolves and put them in the game, let's be honest. And then they say, oh, this is the reason why they were created. They spliced wolf DNA with, you know, the Kadu, whatnot. Yeah, great, I called that from like 10 videos ago before the game was released. So I already knew what was coming. It's predictable at this point, and that's a bit of a shame. You know, even the stuff that they're trying to be out there with is predictable. So I hope RE9 just scales it all back and just goes back to its roots and, we get Jill and Chris, and it's not like boulder punching Chris. He's a bit more fleshed out as a character. Not just some meathead that just walks around and shoots shit and then that's it and saves the day. But I'm sure they won't change his character that much, unfortunately. So we're just gonna have this stock wooden version of Chris Redfield. And I know Chris hasn't been the most in-depth character previously. I understand that, but they could just give him a little bit more characterization, a little bit more to him, a bit more meat on the bones, instead of him just having a meathead. They could put meat on those bones. Anyway, it is what it is. I think that Resident Evil 9, I don't think it's going to be the last one in the mainline canon. I think they're going to maybe have a break. They're fed up maybe of doing mainline entries. They've had enough and they want to just concentrate on the remakes. They can make money off these remakes. Maybe the remakes are overtaking the mainline canon entries in terms of sales. I really don't know. I haven't kept up to date with that sort of stuff. But at the same time, it's like they have a ton of games that they can remake and make money off of, and with the mainline canon entries, they kind of have to start from zero and, build upon that. Like, just, it's like there's nothing there. They start to create something, come up with ideas. With remakes, they already have those ideas there. They already have that stuff already established. The names are established, so people buy them because they played the originals. So it's a lot easier to create a remake than it is an original IP or something continuing the franchise's story canon, and just progressing the franchise. So it's a lot easier. They have stuff to just build upon instead of just starting from scratch. So I think that's what they're aiming for. That's my personal opinion. I think RE9 will probably be the last, for now, of the canon story. And then I think they'll probably concentrate on remaking RE5, 6, and who knows, like maybe RE1 again. I've heard rumblings they might want to remake the first Resident Evil again. We've already had a director's cut remake and loads of mods and stuff, so it wouldn't surprise me. Maybe they'll make it kind of third person over the shoulder like the current remakes, or they might do it first person. Who knows? Switch it up a bit, change it. What I do know is they won't be able to replicate that magic that Shinji Mikami and team did with the GameCube's remake of Resident Evil, so it is what it is. I don't think they'll ever replicate that. Again, golden era of Resident Evil, and all the players were in place. Shinji Mikami was director again. You couldn't recreate that, I don't think. Anyway, having said that, RE9 I think is going to continue with the first person sort of series, end it, with this game. And that's its own thing. That trilogy of games is its own thing. It's very far removed from the CG films canon and also the remakes canon. They're different things. It's almost like Elseworld stories. They're all different in different universes, if you know what I mean. It's very strange. But yeah, they never really match up to what the remakes are going for, or the CG films or the original games. So yeah, it's its own thing. And we've just covered pretty much, this is the only stuff that's come out, and I've probably repeated this before in previous videos, but I thought it was maybe time to talk about it, seeing as RE4 Remake is on the horizon, set for a release date of the 24th of March, and I thought it was about time that we talk about the franchise moving forward. So yeah, I've kind of wanted to talk about RE9 recently. What do I think they're going to do? I don't know. Like, it just depends. What happens is Capcom gauges what people are liking at the time. They this is how they operate now. Like, back in the day, they just create these really cool ideas and these new IPs, and just go with it. And if people liked it, they liked it. If they didn't, they didn't, and they'd move on. And if something didn't sell as well, like when Onimusha tapered off a little bit, they decided, okay, let's stop making Onimusha games. Dino Crisis 2 maybe tapered off a bit. They just never went back to that. Well, Dino Crisis 3, is what ruined the series. So they kind of went, okay, let's leave that alone. So Capcom, they have a habit of, as time's gone on, watching how their games trend and seeing what people like. And so it's like, if the remakes are doing better than the canon entries, they'll continue with the remakes. If the canon entries, if RE9 comes out and does gangbusters and sells shitloads, they'll then continue with that. Like, it's whatever makes them money, and a lot of people are like, that's really sad to hear, but it's the truth. Unfortunately, that's the truth. So whatever makes them money at the time, they will just continue with that. And if RE9 does well, really well, earns them a lot of money, you can bet your life you'll get an RE10, definitely, and you'll get another first-person Resident Evil, etc., etc. We all know this. This is how businesses operate and how businesses work in this day and age. So yes, like RE9, it could go either way. They could be developing it right now, and it is, as the leaker has said, based on folklore and that sort of horror. And then as they see people like RE4 more, they might then switch to kind of a more RE4 style of game, you see. And Resident Evil games are notoriously known for having different versions, and early versions that get scrapped or changed, or it changes completely, stuff added into it that doesn't even resemble the original concept. So Resident Evil games are known for this, So this could be anything by the time it releases, or we get a trailer, or we get news, on this, more news than just this. What do I think RE9 is going to entail? I think Chris is going to be in it. I don't know who the old character is going to be. We'll have to wait and see. I think that it could definitely be set around a folklore type style of horror. I think that Rose will feature in it, definitely. Mia will be in there as well. They kind of have to maybe have some nods towards those characters, or even have them as NPCs within the game. I'm not sure if they'll continue with the Akira mind power, plot lines that were in Shadows of Rose and a little bit in RE8. Maybe they'll want to move away from that. It just depends. They gauge, like I said, how people take to this stuff, and if they like it, they don't like it. And if people don't like it, and the majority of the percentages they didn't like that shit, they'll move away from it, definitely. So I hope they do, because that stuff doesn't belong in Resident Evil at all. Shadows of Rose I haven't even played, because I watched cutscenes, I watched some gameplay. It wasn't me. It's not what I want from Resident Evil, okay? If they made an Akira game, great, yeah? Have that stuff in there. If they make another Evil Within, fine, I'm all for it. Put that stuff in a Resident Evil title, I lose interest. Even side content, I lose interest. That's not what I'm here for. I'm not here for that. Like, when I play Resident Evil, I'm playing Resident Evil because I want a flipping Resident Evil experience. Not a psychological, belongs in Silent Hill, Evil Within type experience. They're different experiences, so I don't want that from Resident Evil. Do you know what I mean? Some people might be like, oh, well, I like it. That's cool. You do you. I've grown up with the series, as far back as Director's Cut. I've seen it progress and evolve, and how it evolved from RE8 to Shadows of Rose, I didn't like. That's just me, I've seen it change so drastically that I'm not a fan of that. So there you go. But yeah, I think RE9, it could be a lot scarier, definitely. If it's set like in a forest and stuff, that's really cool. I think that they could do a lot of things, horror-wise, that could work really, really well. So that would be interesting. And a Wendigo kind of stalking you and things like that would be interesting. That would be very scary, I'm not going to lie. So that intrigues me. But again, having Umbrella in it, yeah, it's a bit cliche, but I kind of want Umbrella to be the bad guys again, the main antagonist of the series. But at the same time, it's been so long now, and the way they've incorporated Umbrella in 7, to 8, well, I can't remember if Umbrella were mentioned in 8, I think they might have been, but the way they incorporated the company back into the series was what it was. I didn't mind it. I thought it was actually quite a unique and clever way to bring Umbrella back. The fact that a lot of the people that work for the company wanted to make good because of course, the atrocities that Umbrella had taken part in previously. They wanted to make good and do right, which, to be honest, I'm a bit on the fence about. I don't think Umbrella could ever be good. But Resident Evil 7's Not a Hero DLC kind of, explained it a bit better. It's a bit annoying it didn't explain it in 7, but anyway, it explained it better in Not a Hero, and I kind of understood that's quite a clever way of incorporating Umbrella back into the series. You can always have the main CEO be an actual bad guy, like, he's trying to do all this stuff on the face of it like they used to when they created products, but then behind the scenes he's doing some nefarious shit. So, having Umbrella come back in, it depends on how it's handled and the way the story's developed in terms of Umbrella and how they turn bad, if they do turn bad, in RE9. That's kind of where it lies when it comes to that. So if they explain it in a really in-depth, clever way, then I could be behind that definitely. But it's going to kind of suck that Umbrella are only there for like that last game, and they haven't been built up, you know, like they were sort of previously. So yeah, it's all dependent on how they tell that story and how they incorporate Umbrella back into the series, even if it is the last game in the supposedly in the canon entries. So yeah, we'll have to see. Horror wise, like I said, first person, third person. It's going to be first person. We all know this. If they handle it properly, then it could be really good. Alien Isolation's a great survival horror alien game. It's the best alien game in my opinion, and they handled that brilliantly. A little bit overly long, but if you're an Alien fan like me, that wasn't a big deal. It wasn't actually a problem. But I can see why some people got fed up with the length. But the way the game is handled, the moment gameplay, the horror, the aliens stalking you, brilliantly done. Brilliantly done. So if they could replicate that in Resident Evil 9 with Wendigo, they've got a winner on their hands. It's going to be scary as shit. So yeah, horror-wise, if it is first person, you've got to make it scary. You know, you've got to make it fucking scary, because that's what's going to draw people, or fans like me. If it's third person over the shoulder, then if you make it just like the remakes and stuff, and you kind of do it in that vein, then again, it could work. It could be great. So yeah, it just depends on what they want to do in terms of perspective. But I think it's going to be first person. It has to be. Otherwise, it's going to look really out of place with the other two games. When it comes to villains, I think they want to scale the villains back a little bit. Miranda was a little too OP. She was a bit too much like a Final Fantasy villain. I didn't like her. And she was also wooden as well. So it was more her powers and how powerful she was, as opposed to her actual personality. It was rubbish. It was crap. It was the typical, like, laughs all the time villain. You know, it was basic, in my opinion. If you scale the villain back a little bit, you have a Wesker type, not an arms dealer like an RE5 of the CG films, but a Wesker type villain. You know, even resurrect Spencer, that could work. It could be pretty cool. We never got a face-off with Spencer. He just got taken out by Wesker, which in its own way was pretty cool. But at the same time, I kind of wanted to face off against him. That would be interesting. If you do incorporate Spencer, that means it's going to be quite an in-depth and already fleshed out villain within the series. So you'd have some backstory there, some characterization already. You could just, you know, add on to that. So he would be an interesting villain in terms of he's existed before, he comes back, and there's other motivations. He tries to kickstart Umbrella, etc., etc. Again, you know, he takes over Umbrella, whatever, right? He's a benefactor that no one knows about behind the scenes, and we find out, shit, you know, Spencer was resurrected. He injected a certain virus, he was resurrected. He now controls Umbrella again. That would be interesting. But if you want to scale it back and just have a completely different villain and keep Spencer dead, then yeah, scale it back. Scale it back, Capcom. Let's have someone that's actually believable as a villain, not some Final Fantasy Ultimecia type, you know, villainess like Miranda, because she sucked. Everybody wanted Dimitrescu to be the villainess of that piece, and she wasn't. You took her out within the first hour, so she sucked. Should have had Dimitrescu, you know, leading that game as a villain. You didn't. So let's scale it back. Think of a clever villain to come up with. Put him in the game. Let's have that. Now, something in terms of gameplay, something that the series has struggled with since Resident Evil 4 is the blend between action and horror. This game should have a great blend of action and horror. It should have those horror moments that scare the shit out of you, and then it should ramp it up here and there and have these action moments. But I don't want it overdone. I don't want another game that's like Resident Evil 4. That's not what I want. That's not what a lot of people want. We want something that is more akin to the action for Resident Evil 2, you know, the remake of Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3's action, stuff like that. You know, it has purpose. It feels weighty when you're playing it, and then you know it's taken away from you, and you get these horror moments, these more silent, quiet, you know, just foreboding moments. Keeping it subtle and then ramping it up. That's how you do that stuff. So let's blend that stuff together well, because I know that they're going to want action in the game, because it draws a bigger crowd, but let's balance it well. Do you know what I mean? Let's not just have it like shootouts constantly, like Village and RE5 and 6 and 4 to an extent. So if they can handle that and, you know, get that on point, which I don't know if they will. I personally don't think they'll be able to do that. They're not very good at balancing that sort of stuff, but we'll have to see. Like older games, definitely they balanced it well. Newer games, not as much. Resident Evil's always had action in it. Let's be real. You play as Jill Valentine in Resident Evil in the original director's cut or the remake. You get a bazooka. Okay, you get a grenade launcher. Same with RE2. So it's always had these like huge, loud, beats of action. But at the same time, it's also had those horror moments and making you feel helpless and like you're stuck in this city with the living dead and they're going to rip your face off at any minute. And there's not much you can do about it. You just got to survive. So with the tools that you have. So yeah, let's keep that vibe and bring that back to the series, because that would be great. I don't think they'll do that, but that's what I want them to do. And that's about it really for Resident Evil 9. They're my thoughts. They're my predictions, my speculations on the game. I'd love to hear what you guys think about Resident Evil 9 down in the comment section below. That's what it's there for. I'd love to hear all your theories, speculation and ideas for that game, what you want Capcom to do and how you want them to proceed with that title. I've shared my thoughts, so I'd like to hear yours. And I think I'm going to cover... What am I going to cover next? I think I'm going to move away from Resident Evil for a little bit. I'll still cover Resident Evil here and there, but I'm going to maybe talk about some Shenmue stuff and some other games. I know MK12 has just been announced. So I'm going to talk about some Mortal Kombat stuff and just, other games, just to kind of wet my palate a little bit, because it gets kind of long having to talk about Resident Evil every time. I like to move away and talk about some other games and stuff, because there's a bunch of fans of all those games that I want to interact with. So yeah, I'll probably, the next thing I'll do Resident Evil wise is I think I might put up the Resident Evil 4 remake playthrough. So yeah, I'll do that, but I'm in the process of getting the PlayStation 5 and then picking up that game for the PS5, so I'll sort that out. But that'll be March 24th when the game's released. I might pick a PS5 up before then and then pick the game up after, or I might pick them all up at the same time. But I'll definitely have a playthrough just uploaded as I play through it, which is a first for me. I haven't done that before. I kind of like to have my own time with those games, or with any game. But for this, I'm wanting to upload the playthrough as I play through it for the first time, get my initial reactions. So yeah, that'll be the next lot of Resident Evil content, and then I think I might play through Resident Evil 7, go from there, and I'll keep my eyes out for any more Resident Evil 9 news and keep you guys updated. So until next time, I'm Sister Check 66 and I'm out of here. Hasta luego.